It's been a long break. I wonder what homework I have. Oh no, I have the Shakespearean project for English. I completely forgot. It says here I need an interesting introduction. Well, I think I can get this done pretty quick. William Shakespeare was born April 26, 1564. Shakespeare is widely considered the world's greatest dramatist, as he wrote 38 plays and 154 sonnets. William Shakespeare was born in Stratford-upon-Avon, a bustling market town 100 miles northwest of London, and baptized there on April 26, 1564. His birthday is traditionally celebrated on April 23rd, which was the date of his death in 1616, and is the feast day of St. George, the patron saint of England. At the age of 18, Shakespeare married Anne Hathaway, a woman 8 years his senior, in a ceremony thought to have been hastily arranged due to her pregnancy. A daughter, Susanna, was born less than 7 months later in May 1583. Twins Hamnet and Judith followed in February 1585. Susanna and Judith would live to old age, while Hamnet, Shakespeare's only son, died at 11. As for William and Anne, it is believed that the couple lived apart for most of the year while the bard pursued his writing and theatre career in London. It was not until the end of his life that Shakespeare moved back in with Anne in their Stratford home. Shakespeare died at the age of 52 of unknown causes on April 23, 1616, leaving the bulk of his estate to his daughter Susanna. The slabstone over Shakespeare's tomb, located inside a Stratford church, bears an epitaph, written, some say, by Shakespeare himself, warding off grave robbers with the curse, "Blessed be the man that spares these stones, and cursed be he that moves my bones." One of Shakespeare's most widely known plays is the story of Romeo and Juliet. Many do not know that Romeo and Juliet was actually supposed to be named the most excellent and lamentable tragedy of Romeo and Juliet. The plot of Romeo and Juliet is based on an Italian tale translated into verse as The Tragical History of Romeus and Juliet by Arthur Brooke in 1562, and retold in prose in Palace of Pleasure by William Paynter in 1567. Shakespeare borrowed heavily from both, but expanded the plot by developing a number of supporting characters, particularly Mercutio and Paris. Believed to have been written between 1591 and 1595, the play was first published in a quarto version in 1597. The text of the first quarto version was poor quality, however, the later editions corrected the text to conform more closely with Shakespeare's original. If I had to sum up Romeo and Juliet in one sentence, it would be that Romeo and Juliet is a tragic love story between two young people who have forbidden love, and it leads to both of their deaths. I will be reenacting Act 5, Scene 3. Romeo and Juliet are the main characters of the final scene of Romeo and Juliet. Romeo is the son and heir of Montague and Lady Montague. He is a young man of about 16. He is handsome, intelligent, and sensitive. Though impulsive and immature, his idealism and passion make him an extremely likable character. He lives in the middle of a violent feud between his family and the Capulets, but he is not at all interested in violence. His only interest is love. At the beginning of the play, he is madly in love with a woman named Rosaline, but at the instant he lays eyes on Juliet, he falls in love with her and forgets Rosaline. Thus, Shakespeare gives us every reason to question how real Romeo's new love is, but Romeo goes to extremes to prove the seriousness of his feelings. He secretly marries Juliet, the daughter of his father's worst enemy. He happily takes abuse from Tybalt, and he would rather die than live without his beloved. Romeo is also an affectionate and devoted friend to his relative Benvolio, Mercutio, and Friar Lawrence. Juliet is the daughter of a Capulet and Lady Capulet. A beautiful 13-year-old girl, Juliet begins the play as a naive child who has thought little about love and marriage, but she grows up quickly upon falling in love with Romeo, the son of her family's greatest enemy. Because she is a girl of an aristocratic family, she has none of the freedom Romeo has to roam around the city, climb over walls in the middle of the night, and get into sword fights. Nevertheless, she shows amazing courage, entrusting her entire life and future to Romeo, even refusing to believe the worst reports about him after he gets involved in a fight with her cousin. Juliet's closest friend and confidant is her nurse, though she is willing to shut the nurse out of her life the moment the nurse turns against Romeo. In faith I will. Let me pursue this face, Mercutio's kingsmen, noble county Paris. What said my man when my betossed soul did not attend him as we rode? I think he told me Paris should have married Juliet. Said he not so? Or did I dream it so? Or am I mad, hearing him talk of Juliet? To think I was so? Oh, give me thy hand. One writ with me in sour misfortune's book, I'll bury thee in a triumphant grave. A grave? Oh no, a lantern slaughtered youth. For here lies Juliet, and her beauty makes this vault a feasting presence full of light. Death, lie thou there by a dead man interred. How oft, when men are at the point of death, have they been merry, which their keepers call a lightning before death? Oh, how may I call this a lightning? O my love, my wife, death that hath sucked the honey of thy breath, hath no one power yet upon thy beauty? Thou art not conquered, beauty's ensign yet is crimson in thy lips and in thy cheeks, and death's pale flag is not advanced there. Tybalt, liest thou there in the bloody sheet? Oh, what more favor can I do to thee than with that hand that cut thy youth in twain, to surrender his that was thine enemy? Forgive me, cousin, ah, dear Juliet. Why art thou so fair? Shall I believe that unsubstantial death is amorous, and that the lean abhorred monster keeps thee here in dark to be his paramour? For fear of that, I still will stay with thee, and never from this palace of dim night depart again. Here will I remain, with worms that are thy chambers made. Oh, here will I set up my everlasting rest, and shake the yoke of inauspicious stars from the world-wearied flesh. Eyes look your last, arms took your last embrace, and lips, oh, the doors of breath sealed from the righteous kiss, a dateless bargain to engrossing death. Come, bitter conduct, come, unsavory guide. Thou desperate pilot, now at once run on the dashing rocks thy seasick, weary bark. Here's to my love. O true apothecary, thy drugs are quick, thus with a kiss I die. Act 5, Scene 3. The scene begins outside of the Capulet tomb with Paris coming to mourn the loss of his bride. He tells his servant to give him some privacy. Then Romeo shows up. Romeo asks Paris to leave because he doesn't want to hurt him and he won't be stopped, but Paris refuses. He thinks that because Romeo is a Montague, that he is there to do damage to the monument. Romeo is forced to stab Paris, who before he dies asks to be put next to Juliet. Romeo does drag him into the tomb because he doesn't want anybody to notice the body. Like Paris, Romeo tells the servant Balthazar to leave him alone. He lies and says that he is there to take Juliet's wedding ring off her finger, but Balthazar thinks better and stays nearby. Romeo goes into the tomb and looks at Juliet. He is astounded by how beautiful she looks. Now knowing that she is minutes away from waking up, he gives her a last kiss, drinks his poison, and dies. Friar Lawrence arrives thinking he will need to break into the tomb to rescue Juliet, but finds that it's already been opened. Balthazar emerges from the shadows and tells Friar Lawrence that he fell asleep, but he thought he heard Romeo fight someone before he entered. Friar Lawrence goes inside to find both Paris and Romeo dead. At that moment, Juliet awakens, knowing that the plan was for Romeo to be there waiting for her. Friar Lawrence tries to keep her attention away from the dead bodies, but she quickly sees what has happened. Friar Lawrence offers to sneak her away and let her live out her life as a nun, but she is not interested. The noise is heard outside, and Friar Lawrence exits, so Juliet tries to kiss Romeo's lips to suck off the poison. When that doesn't work, she takes Romeo's dagger and stabs herself. More people arrive, and they decide they need to find the Capulets and the Montagues. The prince arrives and demands an explanation. The Capulets are shocked to find their daughter, who they thought was already dead, freshly bleeding. Lord Montague joins in and says that his wife is dead due to grief over Romeo's banishment, before finding out that his son is dead too. Friar Lawrence then steps up and explains the entire story, including the secret marriage, the potion, and the undelivered letter. He takes the blame for what happened. Balthazar confirms that he knows of Romeo's plan and tells how Romeo killed Paris. After hearing the story, Capulet offers his hand to Montague in peace. In addition, he wants to give him a large sum of money as a sign of friendship. Montague agrees to take the money and build a gold statue of Juliet to honor her. The prince tells them how their fighting has led to the deaths of their only children and ends with the famous lines, "For never was a story of more woe than this of Juliet and her Romeo." The play Romeo and Juliet has many themes. It is the most famous love story in English literary tradition. Love is naturally the play's dominant and most important theme. The play focuses on romantic love, specifically the intense passion that springs up at first sight between Romeo and Juliet. The themes of death and violence permeate Romeo and Juliet, and they are always connected to passion, whether the passion of love or hate. The connection between hate, violence, and death seems obvious. Another theme present is the individual versus society. Much of Romeo and Juliet involves the lovers' struggle against public and social institutions that either explicitly or implicitly oppose the existence of their love. Another theme in Romeo and Juliet is fate. In a review by Barbara Schultz of Common Sense Media, she states that Romeo and Juliet is unsurprisingly has it all. Clever dialogue, passionate romance, violent conflict, and plenty of poetry.